Hey guys, welcome back to the Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger, and today we're chatting with my friend Michelle Rupp of Memorable Results Media. Michelle is an Emmy Award winning journalist. She was in television and now helps companies, businesses, and ministries get earned media that is not paid. So, like free spots on television, free spots in radio and in print. And so this was an awesome conversation. One of the reasons I love asking people stories is because I just see how God works, and it's so fun to tell his story in people's lives, and hers is no exception, of how God was faithful and how early on a friend spoke into her and said, "You're going to be on TV." And that just resonated with her. And she went into college and majored in communication. It was just straight forward, knowing that's what she wanted to do, and got an internship, and then had to wait a while before she got actually an actual job. And even when she did, it was behind the camera, and she felt like she was supposed to be in front. And how she handled that, and how just God led her through that, and her attitude of how she was, I mean, not always had the best attitude, and was, God, when is this going to happen? And guys, I know that a lot of you can resonate with that. Of you're in a season of waiting, like, God, when is this opportunity that I know is on my heart? When is that going to happen? This episode will encourage you, and God is faithful, and she can look back and see how God, orchestrated these events, and how these things that were seemingly like waiting, they were preparation for her call. And now she's using all those experiences in television to help businesses and ministries. It's so cool. But I learned a ton from her. If you are in a season of waiting, you're going to get a lot out of this. If you are in a business or a ministry and you're interested in how to get earned media on television, radio, or newspaper, this episode is going to be enormously helpful. I know you're going to love it. Here it is. All right, Michelle, welcome to Unleashed.
Hey Ryan, thank you. I'm so happy to be here
Me
today.
too. Took us, why
Yes,
did it take so long to make this happen?
because your people needed to get with my
Oh,
people,
okay,
and
that's right.
or rather, you and I just needed to find a
Right.
common.
And you were like pitching me, like, can I pitch to be on your show? No, you're just going to be on. There's no pitch needed for this.
Oh, that's fun.
But let's tell me, okay, so I'm so excited to get into what you do because it's so unique. I don't think I've ever, see, I have streams of income for almost 5 years, 4 years. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that has a TV background. So this would be
Really?
so cool. Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
just not something in my wheelhouse. And so it's very unique. And so that's what I'm excited about because you just bring a wealth of knowledge that I've never explored with anybody before. So but let's start with your story. You got an
Sure.
awesome story. You got some really cool stuff to share, and let's hear it.
Yes. Well, I am an Emmy award-winning broadcast journalist, and I work with small and medium-sized businesses to get them the earned media that they deserve in their local and regional news. And I spent a career in television that spans right about 20 years.
Wow.
And actually, we could even extend that because even now, I will freelance and fill in
Mm,
on a regular, semi-regular basis.
that's
So while
awesome.
I'm not directly in the newsroom anymore,
Yeah.
I do still dabble in it. And
Like a substitute teacher.
yeah, kind of like, yes, exactly.
What do they call you in for?
There is a particular lifestyle show
Uh-huh.
at one of the stations here,
Yeah.
and the producer and sometimes the anchor or the
Uh-huh.
host of the show will send over a quick text
Yeah.
that says, "Hey, Michelle, are you available Friday?" Or,
Yeah.
"Hey, Michelle, are you available?
That's
Pick a day
awesome.
to fill in." And at
Yeah.
that point, I move everything on my calendar. And yes, I am able to fill
That's
in. So
so awesome.
it's a
And that
lot of
probably
fun.
helps you with what you're doing now, right? Because it keeps your visibility up, at
It
least in the local
does.
area.
It does. Yes.
Yeah.
It keeps my skill set
Uh-huh.
somewhat sharp.
Yeah.
Because it's a lifestyle show, I can show a little personality,
Yeah.
not have to be so, straight faced because of hard news.
Yeah.
And it does what I, one of the ways I like to position is when I encourage my clients to tell their story,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not asking my clients to do something that I am not doing or wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love those opportunities when they come around.
That's awesome. So tell me about the TV business, especially, can we talk about what you did that was very unique about how
Yeah.
you let the world in on your health?
Yes. 19 years ago, actually, I took cameras into the operating room as I underwent about a 6-hour heart surgery.
Wow.
And this was to fix a congenital heart defect that was not fully diagnosed
Mhm.
until 2000 the end of 2005.
Okay.
And so I was scheduled for this procedure in 2006.
Uh-huh.
And I was a reporter at the time and went to my cardiologist and said, hey, I'd love to bring a camera in and take the viewer kind of through my story and
Yeah.
share a very personal part of my story.
Yeah.
And the cardiologist, I'll never forget, she looked me square in the eye and she said, I'll grant permission, but I need everyone in the room to know, including your boss, that if there becomes a moment where I tell them to leave, we're not negotiating.
Uh-huh.
Because first and foremost, you're the patient.
Right.
And so I said, yep, that's fine.
This is
Everybody.
not reality TV. Yeah. They,
And so we did that
they
and
weren't
did it.
there the whole time, were they? Were they do shooting B-roll?
They
Like,
were,
okay.
yeah, they were getting cover. They
Wow.
were there right at the beginning. And of
Okay.
course you see her kind of come into the room and explain to me what we're doing. My parents are there. And then you see me getting wheeled out and
Wow.
into the operating room.
Mm.
And then you cut to me on the table and I am out cold as I should
Wow.
be.
Yeah.
And interestingly, that particular procedure was not successful. And it was a situation where they had a pretty good idea of what they were going to find and where they were going to find it, but they didn't know for sure until they actually got in.
Hmm.
And when they got in, they realized, oh, we thought this extra wire, because it was an electrical problem, we thought this was going to be on the left side of the heart because statistically, that's typically where they are. Oh, no, no, no. Mine was on the right side of the heart. And
Mm.
instead of there being one wire that they anticipated seeing, they discovered a sheath of wires.
Mm.
And that made them unable to burn and correct the problem.
Mm.
So there is video of my parents coming back into the recovery room because my parents had gotten the news.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. This was not successful.
Yeah.
We weren't able to accomplish what we thought.
Hmm.
And I even had the opportunity to interview my mom for the story.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
she very clearly said, you know, your dad and I never dreamed that this would not work.
Mm.
And so then fast forward 3 months, and then in April 7th of 2006, I had a second heart surgery in Cleveland, and we did not take cameras to that to that one because that really upped the ante in the seriousness of the situation.
Hmm.
And great news, the cardiologist was able to fix it,
Yeah.
and we had some pretty. I would find out later that there was a moment where my story could have ended
Mm.
on the
Wow.
table.
Mm.
My parents shared with me about 36 hours later
Yeah.
that the cardiologist had come out and shared with them that I had flatlined
Oh my
on the
God.
table. And they obviously, okay, we know that's not where my story ended. I'm here right now.
Mm.
He was able to intervene and still accomplish and make it a successful
Mm.
situation.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so that was a moment for sure,
Mm.
to just kind of reconcile and go, okay, Lord, what am I doing? Why am I here? What's
Right.
my purpose?
Yeah.
I think we
Mm,
all ask those questions. I just
mhm,
ask those questions perhaps maybe sooner than the
mhm.
average person.
For sure.
And so 19 years later,
Wow.
um, Heart is completely healed. They essentially needed to burn and sever the wires.
Uh-huh.
And I've run 18 marathons. I've run a 50K. I've
Wow.
run 40 half marathons. Like I don't have a cardiologist anymore. I've never had an issue since. And we knew that as long as they could sever that connection, it
Mhm.
would be an immediate healing, and that would
Yeah.
be the end of it. And I wouldn't deal with it ever again.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah,
Oh my
pretty
gosh.
fun.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
How'd you get into TV?
When I was in high school, there was a woman that I went to church with, and she was
Okay.
friends with my parents.
Okay.
And she was back home in Indiana visiting
Uh-huh.
and happened to turn on the TV and saw a girl giving the news and
Yeah.
thought, he looks like Michelle. So she came back to my hometown and said, Michelle, do you know what you want to be when you grow up? And I thought, I'm a junior in high school. No, I don't. I'm a little more concerned on who I'm taking to the homecoming dance
Right.
rather than what I'm going to be when I grow up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And she said, watch this girl on the news. And Michelle, I think you would be fantastic on the news.
Mm.
That is what you're going to do. And at that point in
Wow.
my life, I was a cheerleader. I'd been on the dance team. I was
Yeah.
in drama, like very forward facing things. And I thought, yeah, I could do that. I could be a journalist, sure. So I went to college
Yeah.
to get that communications degree, and it made it nice because my major was not changing every time the wind blew. I was
Right.
focused. I knew I was going into television,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
they're like, let's get in, let's get out, let's get to the internship, let's get this ball rolling.
So that person essentially prophetically spoke into your life saying this is what you're going to do.
100%.
Did you, when you accepted it, so it wasn't like telling you something crazy that you'd never thought of. It was already in line with the skills and abilities that she saw in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I think the initial thought was that does sound crazy.
Hmm.
And that was quickly followed up with, but I could do that.
Yeah.
There was never that mental block of, oh, I could never do that. It
Yeah.
was very much, I could do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
When she was that bold and said that's what you're going to do.
She was. Yeah.
Wow. What
Yeah.
have you to asked her about that? Because that seems pretty like to go to a kid in high school and tell them this is what you're going to do. I mean, that's you're either really wrong or really right. Like
Right.
there's no gray area there.
That's right. That's right. Well, and I think in her mind, that anchor that she and her husband were watching in Indiana, there was such a resemblance.
Mm,
And, she was her husband, she was married to one of the associate pastors at our church.
hmm.
She was over the children's ministry along with my mom. And
Okay.
so like, there was a lot of alignment there.
Yeah.
And they were a couple that it would be very common and
Hmm.
comfortable for them to speak into my life, my brother's life, my sister's life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for her to be so bold now, looking back on it, thinking, that was a pretty bold statement.
Uh-huh.
In the moment, that was not out of context,
Sure.
not out of the realm
Yeah.
of possibilities. So yeah, I thought,
Amazing.
well, Miss Claris said it, so it must be. Let's
Wow. That's so good. My wife and I are talking about, I mean, so this title of this podcast is Unleashed and talking about unleashing your kids. What does that look like? And now our son is only 7. He'll be 8 like in 10 days. So
yeah,
he's still very early on in his stage, but how do you see the gifts that God has given him, the personality traits he has? How do we as parents steward that and not and point him in the right direction? How do we point him to where we feel like God could be calling him? How do we introduce him to those things that could be up his alley, like the things that he might enjoy? How do we steward that as parents? I'm not asking you to answer that. It just makes me think of that your friend who spoke that into you. Like I see this for you.
yeah,
That's so good.
it was good. I mean, had I don't know what my story would be had I not had that encounter. Had
Mm,
she not been so bold,
yeah.
had she even just thought, "Oh, I can't say that to Michelle."
Yeah.
If she would have never planted that seed,
Mm,
I don't know. I don't
yeah.
know if I would have eventually stumbled into television or
Yeah.
not.
So you went into college knowing it was going to be television, not newspaper
Yep.
journalism? Wow,
Mm-mm.
that's so
No,
awesome.
no. I knew it was broadcast. I knew it
Yeah.
was TV.
Okay.
Back in those days, uh, it was an emphasis in telecommunications, which would
Okay.
have allowed for radio or TV. But
Got
I
it.
took the TV track
Yeah.
um, and worked at the college TV station and
Yeah.
created a news show for the campus TV station. And I mean, it just was, I have to tell you, I mean, she really just, I never wavered.
Mm,
So it just made the path clear. That doesn't mean that the path was not difficult,
sure.
but I knew that was my trajectory.
Mm,
So when
wow.
it got hard, I was able to hold on to that. And I do remember very distinctively
Mm,
post college working not in television and having a moment where I had tears and I just said, Lord, is this ever going to work out?
yep.
And it,
Mm. It reminds me of this. There's a scripture in Second Timothy talking about using those prophecies as weapons, and so that's essentially what you did. You're like, okay, no, I'm called to do this, and
yeah,
so even though this is hard, it gave you the why to keep moving forward. That's so
yeah.
good. Oh my gosh, wow, that's interesting that you didn't like because most kids change their major so many times,
Uh-uh.
and you knew this is what
I
you're
know.
going to do.
I knew, and I didn't want to waste time getting to it. I mean,
Yeah,
even down to knowing the television station that I wanted to be a reporter for and
really.
became a reporter for that TV station.
Wow, when did you find that out?
Uh, that probably was senior year, freshman,
Okay.
sophomore year
Where'd
of
you go to
college.
college?
So my Bachelor of Arts in Communications is from the University of Central Arkansas.
Okay.
I later, once I was in television, further developed my passion for weather. And so I
Mhm.
hold a Bachelor of Science from Mississippi State in meteorology.
Got it. Okay.
So,
So is University of Central Arkansas close to the station that you ended up working for?
yes, it was about 30 minutes.
Oh,
And so it
nice.
was great to do an internship
Yeah.
there. And that's really where I cultivated and honed my
Mm,
television skills was at that station.
yeah. Wow. That's so awesome because that's similar to my story. So I knew going into college that I wanted to do something political. So I chose a history major
Yep.
and had a political science minor. And I remember this is just interesting to think about how God used that person to speak into your life. But I remember sitting in lunch my freshman year. There was a kid who had a sister who was interning in this program called the American Studies program. She was at our
Hmm.
same university called Huntington University. At the time was Huntington College. At lunch, he was talking about her experiences in that internship because she was older than me. I think
Yep.
junior, or senior. She was probably a junior because I think juniors did this. And instantly, I knew I'm going to do that. I just knew, and it wasn't like I prayed about it, but I just knew that was going to be for me. And so when my junior year came around, I applied for that, got into the program, and then I got an internship with Senator Dan Coates,
Hmm.
who I ended up working for after college, after I graduated. But it was that internship that got me around it. And I just knew this is where I want to be. I spent I know this podcast is about you, but I'm sharing a story to my
Oh,
audience too that
I
I think
love
it's,
this.
but it's
Yes.
just your story parallels mine so much. And I didn't know that of how with the American Studies program, you spent half the time in class at their location in DC, and
Yep.
then you're supposed to spend the other half the time at the in your internship. But I did not like at all what we were talking about. The lectures and all that was so boring to me compared to being at that office. And so
Yes.
I spent way more time over there, more time than we were supposed to. In fact, I
Yep.
got in trouble for it. And so I got my first B in college because I was focused on but I just knew that's where I needed to be. I was plugged in. It was so life-giving for me.
Yes.
So it sounded
Yes.
like you with the TV studio.
100%. I went over my required hours for my internship. And I thought, I am wanting, I mean, even then, I understood the power of networking and the power of relationships.
Uh-huh.
And I knew that I wanted to make a name for myself. And when
Yeah.
that internship was over,
Uh-huh.
I wanted to be considered
What year were you in college when that internship happened?
90,
You don't have
96.
to say the year, but what year was that? What year in junior, senior, or?
It was my senior year
Okay, all right.
of
Hey,
college.
that's good because my junior year was like, oh my gosh, I got one more year of college to go before I could come back here and do what I love to do. So I'm just curious what it was like for you.
Yeah. No, it was my senior year and it was I want to say it was the last semester
Okay,
before graduating,
okay, that's good.
because I knew that I wanted to have myself positioned to be looked at for a job
Yes,
at the station.
yeah,
And it took almost a full year to be able to have something that opened up that I could apply for. And
wow.
so then it was a matter of nurturing. At the time, I didn't realize it was nurturing
Mm,
relationships, but
yeah,
still, staying in touch with,
yeah.
people at the station. And this was early years of the internet
Okay,
and
yeah,
of email
yeah,
and cell phones. You paid for the minutes.
yes,
So, I mean, these were ancient times that
yeah. Wow,
we're trying to stay connected.
yeah.
Um,
What'd you do for that year for work, or did you need to make what'd that look like?
so I actually worked for a motivational company
Okay,
out of California,
okay,
and this is wild. Because of the times that we lived in, we never thought anything about it. I answered an ad in the back of a Christian magazine
mm-hmm.
for this motivational company out of
Okay,
Burbank.
uh-huh,
And I traveled. I had 9 states in the Midwest, and I would take these motivational assemblies into public schools,
okay,
junior and senior high, and then also elementary. So, junior and senior high, we're talking about not doing drugs, not drinking and
yeah,
driving.
yeah,
Elementary school, we're talking about bullying and being.
yeah.
And while I was doing that, I was still sending out resume tapes
Wow,
to TV
that's
stations
so good.
across the country because I had left my internship with a resume tape.
What was your attitude during that? Was it like, this is preparing me, or was it like, God, I hate this. I can't wait to get to the TV studio and do what I feel like I'm really called to do?
It was both.
Okay.
There were moments where I did not enjoy it,
Yeah.
and yet there were moments when I loved it because again, it
Yeah.
was forward facing. And
Yes.
so, being able to talk to students and
Yeah.
do these assemblies, and then get to see the country. The Midwest. I mean,
Hmm.
we went from Arkansas, North Arkansas, all the way to Minnesota,
Okay.
and from Colorado over to Illinois. And so,
Okay.
um, so the travel aspect was, we were driving, by the way.
Yeah.
So the travel
Wow.
aspect was a lot of fun. Doing the speaking and setting up the shows and whatnot, that was a lot of fun. Also,
Hmm.
like, am I paying my dues because I'm ready to get onto the TV station?
Yeah. What was it? Do you look back now and see how God used that? Was that a stepping stone, or was that what do you, how do you, in your story of your life, what was
Yeah.
that year of waiting about? What would you say?
I think it was great preparation.
Yeah.
I've never really sat and thought about it until this very moment. But like completely looking back, I think that was great preparation,
Mhm.
and that was also a growing season,
Okay.
with the travel and being
Yeah.
exposed to new places and things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Interesting. I just know that like the Lord directs our steps. And so just, sometimes during the waiting season, it's so hard. It's like, God, I can't wait to get to the real thing that I feel called to do. But yet you're here in this job or some season of your life that you're like, I don't really like this season so much. And you're sure you find moments where it's fine, but for the most part,
Yeah.
you're like, I know I'm supposed to be there
Right.
and I'm not there. Where's the job? And so I'm just curious about your attitude, what was like during that season. And
Yeah.
yeah.
There were definitely moments of frustration, and there were moments of tears of, again, is this ever going to happen?
Yeah.
Did I just waste 4 years in school? Do I have a degree
Mm.
that I'm never going to get to use? Am I paying on a degree that I'm never going to get to use? And then there was always that little small voice
Uh-huh.
that was, you're yes, you're going to use your degree.
Yeah.
You're not paying for something that just
Right.
on the wall.
That's
You will
so
you will
good.
get to
What was
use
that
it.
when you got the job at the TV station? What was that first job?
It was the morning show,
Okay.
and I was working for the Chiron, which was all the supers, which now are called lower thirds, that would come up on the screen. I would create those, enter that information in.
Mm.
Uh, the and I did that for, I don't even know that it was 3 months. And then I
Okay.
moved into an associate producer position.
Okay.
And that's the real unique part about it was I was part-time.
Yeah.
And so I have now moved back home with my parents.
Uh-huh.
At that point in time, they lived 60 miles away from the television station
Whoa, you were commuting?
because I'm working the morning show. And at that point in time, the morning show started at 5:30.
Oh my gosh.
I had to be at work at 2 in the morning. So I'm waking up at 12:30 to be out of mom and dad's house at 1, to be in Little Rock at the station by 2
You have to really know that you're doing what you're supposed to do when you do that schedule.
for 18 months.
Wow.
I did that.
My gosh. Did you look back at that now? I'm like, I can't even imagine doing that.
No, listen, when people talk about paying their dues, I'm like, paid in full.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Wow.
paid in full.
Wow.
That was a season.
Okay,
And
so that season, though, but then you still had your eyes on being in front of the camera, but you're
yep,
behind the camera. Talk to me
yep,
about that because it reminds me so much of like, well, it's a little bit different. Like I think about Joel Osteen, who spent so many years behind the
yeah,
camera, and then
that's
got
right. He was in
he didn't
production.
want to be on stage though.
Yep,
You had that desire, and God had placed that desire in you.
that's
But
right.
talk about the 18-month season of when you're my goodness. Okay, so you go through an internship, then you have to wait a year. And
Right.
then you have to wait another 18
A
months
little
to
bit
get in
longer.
front of the camera. So like,
And then even another 2 years, because the fall of 1999,
uh-huh.
my news director came to me and said, we are starting a lifestyle show at 9 in the morning, one of the first in the country, called Good Morning Arkansas. Now we were patterning it after Good Morning Texas.
Hmm.
And so that was kind of the model that we were going to follow. And he said, I want you to be the producer. I mean, this is your show, so you create it. You have 58 minutes, then we'll reduce time for commercials, but it's all lifestyle.
Wow.
And you've got to fill this show every day with 5-minute guests from all across the state. Um, have fun. Oh, and now we'll make you full time so you can move and not have to commute anymore. And
Wow.
good luck. And so okay, fantastic. I've never really create a television show. I've not done that.
Mm.
Also, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be the reporter. And
Yes.
so I create the show,
Uh-huh.
um, was the producer of that for 2 years. And then in my free time, I'm going out with reporters and I'm still working on an updated resume tape and I'm still sending that resume tape out. And
To other stations around the country. Okay.
that's right. That's
Okay.
right. Got an interview, was flown into Lubbock, Texas
Hmm.
for an interview. And the news director hired me on the spot. And he said, as we were kind of fine tuning the details, he said, okay, so for your first year, you'll make $18,000. And your second year, you'll make 18.5.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. And I remember talking to my parents before I boarded the flight. And then when I got back home, my mom said, your dad and I are so proud of you. We're so proud of you. And my dad was on the phone, on the other phone, and he said, but you're not going. You're not
Mm,
taking this job. And I
mm,
said, well, but yes, I am.
mm,
And I'm putting in my notice at my current job. And my parents said, you cannot live on $18,000.
mm,
You can't live on 18.5 and have hair and have makeup and have clothing and like all the
yeah.
things.
Mm,
And so I went in, it was a moment of, oh, my parents just don't understand. And so I went in to resign, and the news director said, I'm not accepting your resignation. And I said to him, but you told me that I would not be considered for a reporter position at this station, which is really where I want to be a reporter, until I
mhm.
went and got experience. So let me go to Lubbock and get a couple years experience,
Yeah.
and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
And through the course of the next couple of days, ultimately, they said, what if we let you start reporting part-time on the weekends? You still have to do Good Morning Arkansas, but twice a month, we'll let you do stories on the weekends. And I was like, done.
Oh wow.
Sorry, Lubbock, I'm not coming. The dream was to be a
Gosh.
reporter here, not be a reporter
Yes. Oh my goodness. There's so much in your story that we could unpack. It's like
here.
your parents that you were like, oh, Dad, I can't believe you did that. But then you look back and you're like, thank you, Jesus, for my
Thank you.
dad.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And then within 4 months, that news director had two reporters walk in one day on the same day and put in their notice. And I turned right around and walked in, and I said, I know you just had two female reporters quit. I am ready. Here is my replacement for Good Morning Arkansas, because in that time I was strategic
Wow.
about developing my replacement. And he said, okay,
That's
I'll give you a
amazing.
shot.
That's so awesome.
So
Oh
there we
my
go.
gosh.
So
Wow. It also kind of reminds me of like Joseph. I mean, you definitely weren't like in the pit, but it probably felt like,
felt
you
like
were in
it.
prison. I mean, you're making money and you're at the place you want to be, but not in the role you wanted to be.
Yep.
But then, my goodness. Wow. You could
Yeah,
write a book about that, just that
I really
story and
probably
like
could.
waiting for that opportunity that I know I'm supposed to be here. I know God called me to this, but
Yep.
I'm here and I don't like it.
Yep. No, I didn't. And but it was it was a great career path,
Mhm.
and some of those, I really, with what I'm doing now, had I not been given the opportunity to create Good Morning Arkansas and
Yeah.
understand how important
Hmm.
earned media can be for
Hmm.
small businesses, I
Yeah.
wouldn't I wouldn't have this business now.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah,
Oh my gosh. I feel like I need to have you back on because we need to deep dive in all this stuff. There's just so much
there's a
meat
lot.
here about just how God worked in your life and how it can encourage so many people to be patient while you're waiting for that thing. And you had no control. Like it's not like you could go out and start your own TV station. You know you're supposed to be here. You're subject to these bosses that are not giving you the opportunity you feel like you deserve. And how do you wait patiently and with a good attitude? And I'm sure you didn't always have a good attitude, but
Yeah.
I mean, you just stuck it out, and man, it's so good. Okay, so how did you end up? Wait, so you're in your dream job. Why'd you leave?
Well, I had the opportunity to, as we would say in the business, come off the streets and be
Mhm.
an anchor in
Yeah,
another market, in another region of the country.
yeah.
And that was also something that I had wanted to do. And
Hmm.
there was a pivotal moment when I left that, when I was at that station, my second station where I anchored, where I realized we put things off down the road. And there was a moment where I realized, oh, I'm coming down that road. And there were a few things in my life that I had wanted that I had put off.
Mm.
again began creating an exit strategy
Wow.
of how do I exit
Mm,
television, which was terrifying because that's all I really knew.
right.
And
So
I
the
remember
business you have now was on your heart when? When did that, or what was the,
2020.
okay. And is that what you knew you were exiting to?
No,
Okay.
I didn't know what I was exiting to. I figured I'd just go into corporate
Yeah.
communications somehow, some way.
You just
That's
knew the
all
season of TV was ending?
it was ending. It
Okay.
was winding down very much.
Yeah.
And went into corporate PR,
Okay.
quickly discovered um, that was not necessarily where I wanted to be.
Mm,
Also, understand coming from news where everything was on the day to day and it was a very fast pace. And what do you mean you didn't need this press release in 5 minutes? Like I
yeah.
was used to a certain cadence. Um, Finally ended up, I'd gone as high as you could go. I was an executive level C-suite individual and hated it.
Yeah.
And it
Mm,
was not fulfilling. And yet I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that that particular position at that particular company was exactly where I was destined to be.
mhm.
And that I will say, I wrestled a lot with the Lord on that because these are not my people. Why am I here? Where are you? This
Mm,
job is having negative impacts on me.
wow. Wow.
It was 2020.
Yeah.
It was January of 2020. 2020 did not go like how we thought it was going to go.
No.
And so then I realized, well, this dream of doing something on my own, I can't do that right now. And so I put it on the shelf for a
Mm,
year.
mm,
And then it was 2021 where I had a conversation with my youngest sister, who is an entrepreneur herself. And she just very simply asked, Michelle, what's that dream? What's that dream that you have?
that's okay.
And I just bubbled up in the tears and like all of it just like was
Yeah.
there. And I started taking steps to create
Mm,
memorable results media and also took steps to get some things in order
mhm.
because I knew if I didn't make the jump, I was never going to make the jump.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had
Wow.
the evidence of when I made the jump to move to a different state in a different region to be an anchor where I knew no one.
Yeah.
And that worked out.
Yes.
So
Mm,
as my brain kept saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, I would think, but I have
yes.
worked. And so if it worked back then, it's going to work now.
That's so good.
And I left corporate the summer of 2022
Okay.
and
Wow.
have been full time in my company ever since.
Yeah. Well, you just celebrated 4 years, right? Of your,
Good.
yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that on the Echelon group.
Yep. Yep.
Or no, I saw it in your, used in your email. Then I shared it
Yes.
with the
An
Echelon
email.
group.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
fourth
You
birthday
shared your
party
advice.
for
Yep.
memorable results media. Oh my gosh, there's so much in your story that we could unpack, but I want to get into what you're doing now with memorable results media and how you're helping people and just
Yes.
yeah. So so you're taking that experience with TV and you're
Yep.
helping small businesses and ministries
That's
uh,
right.
get on television.
That's right. My parents owned a family-owned hardware store, and so I never really realized that I had a little bit of that entrepreneurial
Yeah.
spirit in me. Never
Yeah.
realized that. They had our hardware store for several years, and then just as big box stores were coming into our community, little by little, the mom and pop stores closed,
Mm,
and ultimately, mom and dad made the difficult decision that they needed to close the
mm,
store. And that left an impression on me that I would later discover in thinking earned media is so important. It's so
mhm,
vital
mhm.
to small businesses. And
Yeah.
earned media essentially is non-paid media.
Right.
But positioning it in a way that, yes, it's a commercial, but it's not a commercial. Because as the business owner, you are coming onto local news and you are educating the viewer, what's in it for the viewer? What are they learning from you?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a recipe or how to make a spring wreath to hang on your door,
Mm-hmm.
what are they learning?
Yeah.
And by teaching the audience and really serving the audience and going into it with that mindset,
Mm,
TV stations love that and they
yeah.
need the content. And so I'm
Yeah.
able to take what I learned as a producer and
Yeah.
looking for content and then working with businesses going, what's your story?
That's awesome.
What's that gold here that we can uncover, that we can get you some positive publicity that
Yes.
gets your business in front of so many more eyes in the
Mhm.
community, not just what we're getting on social media.
Right.
And so that's what I love doing.
That's so awesome. Tell me about some of the clients. You don't have to name names, but some of the things that they're doing and you've helped them get earned media on.
I worked with one client who was a real estate agent
Uh-huh.
and positioned her as a thought leader in her community.
Wow.
And then through relationships that I have in television, it's a tight group. And so chances are real good I have worked with someone who might be
Yes.
at that station.
Well, that's so
And
good.
so through those connections, we were able to position that client kind of as the go-to thought leader when there were consumer questions about real estate and what's
Yes. So if they
doing.
have like a news, hey, the Feds decrease the interest rate, they may
What does
bring your
that mean?
friend on to say, hey, this news just happened. How does this affect real estate in Little
That's
Rock and in Arkansas or even the whole country?
That's right. That's right.
Awesome.
We positioned her as that thought
Wow.
leader. I've worked with nonprofit organizations that have sold out their events just by simply getting them in on the news,
Wow.
talking about their event and sharing about what people who attend are going to receive when they're at
Yeah.
the event. I've worked with attorneys.
Mhm.
I've worked with businesses.
Mhm.
One client I'm thinking of in particular, we did a whole campaign. They suffered a natural disaster.
Mhm.
And so they were immediately thrust into a crisis situation. And we were
Mhm.
able to navigate that. And we were able to get them some incredible publicity and
Mm.
they continue to flourish and
Yeah.
we regularly get them media on different things that they are doing within the community. And
Yes.
so while yes, I do a lot here in Arkansas, I do
Mhm.
things outside the state as
Yeah.
well, because there are small businesses outside the
Yeah, for
state,
sure.
TV
Well, you
stations
understand, like,
outside.
since you know the what the newsroom's like, it operates very similarly, probably all over the country. So you may not have the connection with somebody in Sacramento, California, but you know what to do, and how to get them in
Right,
front of
or
those
at
people.
least who to get it in front of.
Right.
I'm always real clear that clients know I'm not guaranteeing
Sure.
that you will get on television because I don't make those decisions. I wish I did. And if I did, you'd be on every day, but I don't
Right.
make those decisions. But what I can do is get you in front of those decision makers
That's good.
so that they can go, oh, yes, or oh, this is really good, but we're going to need to revisit this in a
Yeah.
few weeks because we're busy. And again, it just
Yeah.
goes to relationships.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you about crisis management, which is a quick question thing about press releases. So, and
Yeah.
if I had a local hardware store, um, I mean, what's my angle? What do I even say? Like, I understand the realtor. Yeah, they're a thought leader when
Yeah.
there's news happening. Hardware store, it's a little bit more of a stretch for me to think of like, what would I be telling them that I could come speak about?
So on
Maybe
TV,
like home building stuff or construction, maybe.
that's right. Like what is there we're in the season where everybody's having spring break.
Yeah.
And so what is a DIY project that
There you go.
you could do with your kids?
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you are thinking, I'm going to power wash. That sounds like a great idea. I'm going to power wash the house.
Mm,
Okay, and what are a few things you need to know so that you don't blow out your windows because
that's
the pressure's too high
that's so
when
good.
you go
Yes.
out?
Yes. Yes. Okay. All
So things
right.
like that.
So how often would you pitch? If I'm the hardware store owner, I mean, I'm certainly don't want to annoy them by sending them a press release every day.
Sure.
Like what would my goal, would I say, hey, Mr. Producer, can we go for coffee? Want to share what I'm doing? Would I just pick up the phone? Do I send an email? If I
I would
know
send in.
nobody in the TV industry, my local TV station, how
Yep.
do I build that relationship so they even know that I exist?
Yep. So producers typically finding that information is not easy to get online. Of course, there's always the meet the team or contact us on television websites. And the meet the team, it's got all your reporters and your anchors. It's got their bios. A lot of times they put in there what they enjoy doing. I would encourage, if you're following someone on social media that you like, you could start commenting on posts that they might have. Not
So
in
would
a
that be like strategic, like the reporter that might like maybe the reporter that deals with the area of like there might be a health reporter. So if I'm in
That's
the
right.
healthcare industry, I'm going to want to build a relationship with that reporter.
Absolutely,
Okay.
100%. That's their beat in TV.
Okay.
That's what they called it. What's your beat? Are you a
Yeah.
beat reporter?
Okay.
And that would be healthcare, education, politics.
Okay.
Some stations have beat reporters, some do not. But I would kind of find who you like. You like their storytelling. You can
Hmm.
always pitch to them in an email.
Okay.
You can
Directly to the reporter.
absolutely,
Okay.
yes. And you can also call the station and ask who's the producer of Daybreak? Who's the
Mm.
producer of Good Morning Today? Who's the
Yeah.
producer of, a
Okay.
morning show, a mid-morning show, a noon show?
Hmm.
You don't want to talk to them. You just want to get their email address because
Yeah.
all this can be done over email.
Okay.
And 9 times out of 10, all of this is done over
Okay.
email.
Wow.
So, yeah, you can, for as frightening as it might be to certain generations to actually pick up a phone and dial the number and make a call,
Yeah.
you totally can do that. And,
Wow.
and they will give you the email address. It's okay to ask.
That's good. Okay, so let's say you're the producer. I'm the hardware store owner.
Yep,
What's that email even sound like that I send to you? And I know you have a bunch of resources I'm going to send people to. You
sure.
have a download for the press release, and so
Okay.
we're not going to go to those details. But I'm just curious, like, what does that first email even sound like? If I've never talked to you before, I'm a hardware store owner, and I want to get some earned media.
That's right. So your opening line might be something along the lines of how much you enjoy watching that show,
Hmm.
and you had
I better go watch the show. I've never watched it.
please watch the show. Kind of like how you don't leave podcast reviews unless you've actually listened to the
Right.
podcast. Like, watch the show.
Yeah.
Um, how you enjoyed watching the show and you had an idea that would benefit the viewers and that's key.
Mm,
Benefit the viewers. I mean, use that language. I
mm.
just did this with a friend of mine who works at CBS in New York.
Okay.
And I said, I've got an idea that will benefit your viewers and inspire them
Mm,
because I'm actually pitching him on behalf of a client.
nice.
And so I've got an idea that will benefit your viewers
Hmm.
and then go into your idea. This is what
Interesting.
a lot of people are staying home over spring break and are doing staycations. And if they are thinking about spring cleaning over spring
Mhm.
break, and
Mhm.
power washing is a big something that a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to come on and show your viewers how to power wash their house
Yes.
without blowing out their windows.
Love it. And you're not saying, "Hey, I own a hardware store. I want to do a commercial at all." It's more like this is all serving the audience.
That's right.
And
That's right.
because I get in front of the camera, obviously they're going to say Ryan Rieger, owner of Rieger Hardware Store.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. That's
And
awesome.
and when you lay out that you will bring the power washer, you're bringing the hose.
Uh-huh.
All you need is a water hookup, but
Yeah.
that you're going to physically show
Yeah.
how to do this, and you can even power wash the exterior of the TV station. Like, you are getting that descriptive
Oh, that's so good.
that
Yeah.
I mean, the producer on the other end, they'd be nuts
Yeah.
to say, no,
Wow.
I don't want that. I mean, and the only way they would say, we can't do that is if they're already booked.
Right.
But that's how descriptive, that's how I am going to show this viewer
Oh,
outside
wow.
of coming to the viewer's house and doing it for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to show them exactly what they need to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so then becomes interactive. And so now the
Mm.
host of that show is fumbling around trying to figure out how to connect the water hose to the power washer and how all that's going to work.
Hmm.
And so now it's become very interactive.
Yeah.
And from a producer standpoint,
Uh-huh.
I love you.
That's awesome.
I want to have you back on my show.
Wow. Okay, so let's say you don't get a response from that. What's the next? You pitch them again, the same thing, something different?
So I would do a follow up. I
Okay.
would, okay, here's a little nugget, a juicy nugget of information.
Yeah.
When I'm sending emails or pitches, I do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I really
Mm.
try to stay away on Mondays because people are getting back in the office on Mondays and they only want to answer the emails that they absolutely have to.
Yep.
I'm also not sending them on Fridays because a lot of people try to get out on Friday. Um,
That's good.
so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If you're looking at a weekend show, I definitely would pitch on a Thursday.
Hmm.
There it gets real nuanced
Yep.
because there are different schedules. I mean, that morning show schedule for me was 2 in the morning till 9 in the morning.
Right.
So it's different. But um, I look at pitching Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then following up. Like I'm going to give it a week,
Okay.
and then I'm following it back
Okay.
up. And I typically will
Yeah.
follow up 3 times.
Okay.
And on the third follow up, I will say, is this still live? Is this still alive?
Yeah.
And I would do like a kind of brief little synopsis as you're replying and
Yeah.
following up so that your initial email, they can scroll down and read the
Yeah.
entire pitch, but I'm just
Sure.
kind of bumping that back up
That's good.
because newsrooms I had one friend tell me that he gets 200 emails a day.
Oh my
He's like,
God.
I'm just not going through them. And I've even had my emails get caught up in just
Yeah.
a mass deletion. And I've had producers say, we're so glad you followed up because we completely missed your initial
Yeah.
email.
Wow. That's good.
So,
That's so good. All right, I want to talk about, I mean, we could go deep on that anytime too, and that's why you have the business that you do because you go bit deep with the clients and you do it for them.
I do.
Okay, so obviously, the other thing that you often do is helping people through crisis. So if
Mhm.
something happens at let's say it's a ministry, something happened in the eldership or whatever, I might have a TV crew coming that day. I'm like, uh-oh, what do we do? It'd be nice if you had a plan in place ahead of time. You actually help
100%.
people have a plan in place before the
Yes.
crisis happens.
Yes, yes, I do. I read a statistic last week. 46% of American businesses do not have a crisis plan.
Mm,
Now, that was businesses. I'm not sure on the ministry side, but if at least right around half don't have one, I would venture to say probably the same for ministry and being prepared. We're prepared for everything. We're prepared for weddings and vacations and
yeah,
tailgates and
yeah.
we're prepared first days of school. But we don't prepare for a crisis.
Mm,
And a lot of that could be just when a crisis happens, everything becomes out of control.
right.
But having a plan that gives you an element of control
Yeah.
because you know exactly what you're going to say, you know who's going to be speaking on behalf of the organization,
Hmm.
business or ministry, and you know how you're able to get in front of the story before the story is already 6 miles down the road.
Wow.
And the sooner that you can control a narrative,
Hmm.
the less time you can end up in a news cycle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's inevitable and you're going to be in that news cycle for 24 to 48 hours, but we really want to try to minimize the time
Yeah.
that you're in that news cycle. And one of the ways you can do that is when you are in front of the story and giving the reporters what they need
Mm,
and not saying no comment.
yeah.
Because that's just going to make
Mm,
a reporter start to dig and wonder
yeah.
what you're covering up.
Mm,
And so there are ways to kind of walk through it.
yeah.
There are multiple ways. Is there one exact right way? There's not.
Mm,
But having an initial plan to at least get you through those first hours
yeah.
is always really
Yeah.
good.
What's your take on so I come from a conservative background politically, and it's
Yeah,
no secret that a lot of the media, national media is more liberal.
sure. Right.
What's your let's say I'm a ministry person and I know that my local reporter who covers religion is very much kind of antagonistic and doesn't like me at all. Um, how do you deal with somebody like that? Because I know a lot of Christians are afraid of media, especially
Yeah.
TV media, because they're like they have this perspective that they don't like me, so I don't even want to talk to them at all.
Yep.
What's your take on that? Because there could be a crisis and they're at my door, and I don't want to talk to them because I know the story is going to be negative no matter what I say. So, like, how do you handle that?
You handle it with grace,
Mm-hmm.
and you can handle it in such a way that you're right. It's out of your hands how the journalist maneuvers the story.
Yeah.
But the fact that a ministry was able to get out front,
Mm-hmm.
admit that if they were in the wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and then even follow up with that reporter
Mm-hmm.
the next day and just say, is there anything else you need?
Mm-hmm.
That is a way of showing a level of kindness
Mm-hmm.
that I can promise you reporters are not used to getting ever.
Wow, that's good.
And so now, depending on the situation, certainly you're going to have attorneys involved that are going to come from the advisement of don't say a word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't agree with that
Uh-huh.
because of having been being a journalist,
Yeah.
and I know that then, boy, that just sounds all the bells and whistles of, well, what are you?
Yeah.
And so it's a lot easier to give a reporter, newspaper, radio, TV, give them enough that they can do their job,
Yeah.
and then
That's good.
ask them if they need anything else the next day, and then
Mm,
let it
mm,
die. And then you start working internally on how are we handling things
yeah.
internally, messaging that's going out to our congregation, that type of thing.
Yeah. That's good.
Um, so it's because, again, you really want to minimize how long you're in the media, and
Right.
I even, depending on the situation, I might even take it a step further and encourage someone to hold a press conference,
Mm-hmm.
because there can be a lot missed in a statement that's sent via email.
Yeah.
You don't get tone, you don't
Mm,
get the body language,
right.
you don't get the atmosphere,
Yeah.
you don't get any of that.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to write in an email, I'm sorry this happened. It's completely different to hold a press conference and
Yeah.
say, I'm
Mm,
so sorry
right. Because then your
this happened.
visuals on TV there, and the people can decide for themselves if you're sincere.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
So
Wow. I guess the moral of the story is if you have a crisis, just call Michelle, but actually call her before the crisis.
before,
We can
let's
have
get
a
a plan
plan.
together.
Have you helped ministry or not, or have you helped any business or ministry through a crisis? They didn't call you before. They just have a crisis. Now they're calling you. Have you had that happen yet?
I've worked with a business
Mhm.
that was kind of in the middle of the
Okay.
crisis. It
Okay.
was, what do I say? How do
Yeah.
I? And it was something that was short-lived.
Yeah.
It really was maybe 12 hours. I like to say that having the plan is almost like having a fire extinguisher.
Mhm.
And that fire extinguisher, you're able to kind of start to attack a fire while someone
Yeah.
else is calling 911 and getting the fire department. That
Yes.
plan kind of is your fire extinguisher while someone else is calling that crisis pro to
Right.
get them on their way or over to your business to really kind of help you navigate and walk that
Mm.
path, holding your hand. I
Yes.
I don't necessarily advise people to face a crisis on their own.
Mhm.
It's just a little bit easier when you've got somebody else that can
Yeah.
walk that road with you.
So good. All right. Well, how can people find you? Remember, you wanted to go to memorableresultsmedia.com, right?
That's a great place. I'm also over on LinkedIn as
Yeah.
Michelle Rupp, and I'm also on Instagram, Memorable Results Media.
I love it. And the one of the things we talked about, you said there was a blog post that they can find the emergency response.
There is. Yep.
Okay.
There's a blog post at memorableresultsmedia.com. Go down to the blog tab. It's the upper left-hand corner of the homepage. And there is a blog post that was put up in late March that says emergency response kit. And there are some very, 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 very high level. I would not, it's a great place to start. I don't know that I would base my sole strategy on
Sure.
these 3 things to do and 3 things not to
Yeah.
do. Like there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
It's very high level, but
Yeah.
it really can help, particularly an online business owner,
Yeah.
even
Okay.
somebody that doesn't have a brick and mortar.
Okay.
And so
And you also have a download for how to write a press release, don't you?
I do. Yes, that's on the homepage as well.
Nice.
Where I'll send you a video, walk you through
Love
the 7 steps of writing a press release. It may sound very 1987, but it is something that is still used today.
That's right. Good. Michelle, this has been awesome. I've learned so much more about you than I knew before. So let me know when you want to come back on. We could unpack so much of your story. There's like so many sermons of how your story of how God's been faithful and taking you through the seasons that you didn't want to go through, and how you persevered, and now you're where he wants you to be. So it's just so cool.
Yeah. Thank you. It was, Ryan, it was a pleasure to serve your listeners and your audience today. And thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thanks.